To many Americans, Robert F. Kennedy symbolized a bright and hopeful future. Tragically, one fateful night saw his life and his political career cut short in the blink of an eye. You remember the grainy footage and the iconic photos from that tragic night in 1968. Robert F. Kennedy had just won the California primary and gave an inspiring speech to celebrate his victory at the Ambassador Hotel. As he walked through the hotel kitchen, shots rang out. In an instant, Bobby Kennedy lay dying on the floor, his eyes open but lifeless. America had lost another Kennedy, another leader of hope and change cut down in his prime. Over 50 years later, Bobby Kennedy's assassination still haunts us. The man convicted of his murder, Sirhan, claims to have no memory of that night. Sirhan later gave an interview to Inside Edition in 1989 where he revealed why he assassinated RFK. Stick to the end to find out the full details of that interview. Conspiracy theories abound that others were involved. Keep watching to discover all the related theories and their concrete evidence. Was it political enemies? Organized crime? Something more sinister? We may never know the full truth of what happened in the Ambassador Hotel kitchen. But we can still hear the echoes of Bobby Kennedy's vision for a just society. His tragic end reminds us of the light we lost that night in June and the future that might have been. The fateful night of the 5th of June 1968 started out with optimism and celebration. RFK had just won the California Democratic presidential primary, a pivotal moment in his campaign. You joined the excited crowds at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles to see Kennedy speak. Around midnight, Kennedy finished his victory speech in the embassy room and you followed the entourage through the hotel kitchen. In an instant, the jubilant atmosphere shattered. Gunshots rang out, echoing through the cramped room. Kennedy lay wounded on the floor. Chaos erupted. People screamed and ducked for cover. You stared in disbelief at the prone figure, his eyes open but motionless. His wife Ethel rushed to his side, cradling his head. The shooter, later identified as Sirhan, was wrestled to the ground by Kennedy's bodyguards. Kennedy was rushed to the hospital but despite emergency surgery, succumbed to his wounds 26 hours later. When news of his death spread, an outpouring of grief enveloped the nation. The loss of another Kennedy only after 5 years, a champion for civil rights and social justice, was a devastating blow in an already turbulent year. The assassination marked a pivotal turning point, plunging millions into mourning and speculation about what might have been. Questions still remain about that fateful night and the complex man that was Bobby Kennedy. His death, like his brothers before him, left behind a lingering sense of unfulfilled promises and dreams cut short. A flame extinguished too soon, altering the course of history. The official government investigations into RFK's assassination were fraught with issues from the start. The Los Angeles Police Department botched the initial investigation, failing to properly secure the crime scene or collect key evidence like the gun, all of which degraded or disappeared. The LAPD and LA County District Attorney's Office concluded that Sirhan acted alone. However, the coroner's inquest jury and later re-investigations disagreed with these findings. They determined that the bullet trajectories and gunshot acoustics indicated more than one shooter was involved. In 1975, the U.S. Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, nicknamed the Church Committee, found that the LAPD and FBI had mishandled or covered up information related to RFK's murder. They discovered police had bullied or manipulated witness testimony and failed to follow important leads. Over the years, further independent reviews by forensic experts, historians, and lawyers have poked major holes in the official version of events. They point out that Sirhan shot from the front, but Kennedy's fatal wound was behind his ear. They highlight how many claimed shots were fired, far more than Sehan's gun could hold. And they expose destroyed or missing evidence, like door frames, ceiling tiles, and photos from the pantry that could prove conclusively how many shooters were present. The truth remains elusive, but it's clear the government agencies we relied upon failed catastrophically. Half a century later, doubts and inconsistencies continue to fuel speculation about sinister forces behind RFK's tragic end. His murder remains an open case, and calls for a new, independent investigation persist. The full story of what really happened that night remains an unsolved mystery. The tragic assassination of Robert F. Kennedy in 1968 left many unanswered questions that still fuel conspiracy theories today. Many people also believed that his death had to do something with Marilyn Monroe's life. If you don't know about Marilyn Monroe's tragic life and sudden death, do check out our detailed video on that. Thane Eugene Caesar was a security guard on duty at the Ambassador Hotel the night RFK was shot. Oddly, Caesar was positioned directly behind Kennedy at the time of the shooting and was carrying a gun of the same caliber as the murder weapon. Caesar had ties to far-right groups opposed to the Kennedy family. Despite this suspicious coincidence, Caesar was never seriously investigated as a suspect. His potential role in the assassination remains an unsolved mystery. According to expert analysis, the bullets that hit Kennedy followed an improbable zigzag path, inconsistent with a single gunman firing from behind. The fatal shot was fired at near point-blank range behind Kennedy's right ear. Yet other shots came from the front and side. This bizarre trajectory fueled speculation of a second gunman who was never identified. Strangely, security footage of the shooting in the hotel pantry where Kennedy was killed went missing and was never recovered. The absence of video evidence made it nearly impossible to conclusively determine how many shooters were involved or definitively rule out conspiracy theories of additional gunmen. Decades later, questions still remain about what those lost tapes may have revealed. The lapped investigation into RFK's murder was badly mishandled, with the crime scene improperly secured and evidence contaminated or destroyed. The bungled handling of the case destroyed any hope of finding definitive answers and allowed conspiracy theories to flourish. After 50 years, the full truth behind this tragic event may never be known. Those who study the Robert Kennedy assassination are left with unsettling uncertainties. While the official conclusion points to Sirhan as the lone assassin, strange inconsistencies in the evidence suggest that there is more to this tragic story that remains concealed. Was Sirhan truly acting alone when he assassinated Robert F. Kennedy on the 5th of June 1968? Many theorists don't think so. They believe that Sirhan was either framed or manipulated into being a patsy for the real killers. Let's explore some of the alternative theories about who else may have been involved in RFK's tragic death. Some theorists suggest US intelligence agencies like the CIA and FBI wanted to stop RFK from becoming president. RFK had promised major reforms, including dismantling the CIA. The assassination happened at the Ambassador Hotel, where RFK's victory speech was held after winning the California Democratic presidential primary. The CIA and FBI would have had knowledge of the event and access to infiltrate the location. However, most historians have found little evidence to directly tie these agencies to the assassination. Caesar was a security guard who walked with RFK through the hotel pantry where the shooting occurred. Caesar owned the same model of gun as Sirhan, and many claim he fired the fatal shot. Caesar's links to far-right groups and his inconsistent statements about his gun and location during the shooting have fueled speculation. However, ballistics tests did not match Caesar's gun to the bullets that struck RFK. Most historians consider Caesar an unlikely suspect. While the full truth may never be known, RFK's assassination remains a tragic moment in US history. Regardless of the perpetrator, we lost a promising leader who could have shaped a different future. As with JFK's death, RFK's untimely end will likely continue to spawn theories for generations to come. The aftermath of Robert F. Kennedy's assassination was one of shock, grief, and speculation. His death came just 2 months after Martin Luther King Jr. was gunned down, and only 5 years after his brother, President John F. Kennedy, was assassinated. The nation was still reeling, and now the last surviving Kennedy brother, a man seen as a beacon of hope, was gone. In the wake of the tragedy, many questioned whether Assassination had acted alone. Kennedy's death seemed too coincidental given the turbulent times. Speculation ran rampant about possible conspiracies involving everyone from the Mafia to the CIA. The official investigation concluded that Assassination acted alone, but inconsistencies in witness testimony and ballistic evidence have fueled speculation of a second gunman. We may never know the full truth of what happened that night at the Ambassador Hotel. While Kennedy's life was cut short, his legacy lives on. He is remembered for his progressive vision, moral courage, and compassion. Kennedy championed civil rights, fought poverty, and opposed the Vietnam War. He appealed to people's better nature and gave them hope that positive change was possible. Though gone for over 50 years, Kennedy still captures our imagination. His death, like his brother's, has taken on an almost mythic status. They represent a lost promise of what could have been, and a warning about the forces that threaten peaceful change and social justice. Kennedy's vision still inspires us today, a bittersweet reminder of the light that was lost on that tragic June night. The autopsy of Robert F. Kennedy revealed critical details about the gunshot wounds that ultimately led to his death. According to the coroner's report, Kennedy was shot 3 times at point-blank range with a .22 caliber pistol. The first shot entered Kennedy's right armpit, traveled downward and lodged in his spine. This shot alone would have paralyzed him. The second shot hit Kennedy behind his right ear, shattering his skull and bone fragments into his brain. This wound was deemed unsurvivable. The final shot passed through his right shoulder pad, exiting his chest. Though not immediately fatal, it contributed to massive blood loss. In total, Kennedy was shot from a distance of just 1 to 6 inches away. The trajectory of the bullets and gunpowder burns on his clothing indicated the assassin had fired at nearly point-blank range. The official time of death was 1:44 a.m. PDT on the 6th of June 1968, nearly 26 hours after the shooting. Despite several hours of surgery at Good Samaritan Hospital to remove bullet fragments and repair damage, the wounds from shots 1 and 2 proved fatal. Conspiracy theories abounded following the assassination, in part due to the number and trajectory of gunshots. However, multiple official investigations found no evidence to contradict the conclusion that Assassination acted alone. Although his motives were deemed political, no wider conspiracy was uncovered. So while the official verdict still stands, the unanswered questions and suspicious circumstances surrounding Bobby Kennedy's death continue to haunt history. His tragic end cut short a promising political career and robbed America of a leader who might have changed the course of history. We'll likely never know the full truth. But analyzing all the conspiracy theories, it is evident that no theory actually proves there was more than one killer. Most probably it was just a lone gunman acting alone. The truth died with Bobby Kennedy over 50 years ago, buried as deeply as the bullets in his body. His death, like his brothers before him, shaped a generation. and the unanswered questions have echoed through the decades ever since. While the official investigations present a plausible narrative surrounding Robert F. Kennedy's assassination, let's dig deep into the speculation and creative thinking. The belief that RFK's unwavering support for the Jewish state played a role in his demise adds an intriguing layer to the mystery. Some people believe that RFK's unwavering support for the Jewish state strengthened American-Israeli ties and ultimately led to his assassination by a Palestinian gunman. The 22-year-old killer Sahan himself told the police that Kennedy's pro-Israel stance led him to kill RFK. Palestinians thought if he wasn't killed he would partner up with Israel to destroy them and favor Israel over them. His untimely death was a message to anyone who wanted to follow his steps. Some people also believe that his death is linked with JFK's death. How both the Kennedy brothers were assassinated randomly remains the biggest question of American political history. It may also have been a family history which got both of them killed. We might never truly know who really killed RFK and why.
When did your feelings start to take on this incredibly obsessional?
You mentioned earlier about the intensity of your feelings. When did this obsession begin? Was it after the Arab-Israeli War or upon arriving in the country?
I believe it surfaced prominently after the 1967 war, where the Arabs suffered defeat, and my anger grew at the American response to the plight of Palestinians and Arabs.
What triggered your actions?
It was after a campaign speech in Oregon where Kennedy pledged military support to Israel. This angered me, and it was then that I targeted him for what happened.
Why did Robert Kennedy, a champion for the downtrodden, become the focus of your hatred?
He was my hero, and his support for sending jets to Israel felt like a betrayal. The loss of hope and the double standards in his stance on different issues fueled my anger.
In the months leading up to the assassination, you wrote in your diary that RFK must die. Can you elaborate on your mindset during that period?
My feelings were indeed growing stronger, but it wasn't a deliberate plan to kill him. It was a reflection of the collective frustration felt by the Arab community, not just me.
Why did you choose violence instead of other means to express your discontent?
I was not in full control of my senses during the shooting. It wasn't a rational act, and I regret my actions.
Senator Edward Kennedy showed mercy toward you in a letter to the court. How did you feel about that?
I was stunned by Senator Kennedy's magnanimity. I didn't feel deserving of it, considering the gravity of my offense.
Can you reflect on your time on death row?
It was a realization that I was spending my last days. I tried to maximize what was left of my life and reflect on what could have been corrected.
Looking back, do you wish there was a conspiracy involved?
In hindsight, I wish there was a conspiracy because it might have been aborted, and Robert Kennedy would still be alive.
What do you offer to the American people and Kennedy's family?
I apologize for my actions and the suffering I caused. If I could resurrect Robert Kennedy and give him back, I would do it instantly.
Do watch the JFK assassination video on our channel to find a link between the Kennedy brothers' assassination. Since you've made it this far, do let us know what you think happened to Robert F. Kennedy, and leave us a thumbs up so that we can keep making such content. We'll see you next time on Crime and Conspiracy.